I want to jump into the first topic with Paul and talk to both Paul and Kendall about this, obviously. But Paul Fisher kind of emailed me and said, is now sort of the time to be strategically greedy, quote unquote, in a down market, right? So we all know the market's down. No one's going to deny that. No one's going to sugarcoat it. But there are some areas of the sports card market that are still doing well, of course. And there are areas of the sports card market where there potentially are some concerns. But before we get into any concerns, let's talk about maybe some opportunities. So, Paul, do you want to lead us off with where your head's been at recently with some opportunities in sort of the dip that we've had recently in the sports card market?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like obviously, most assets are down right now. You hear in Canada in particular, like we've noticed the real estate markets very, very quickly downturned 15%. We haven't seen this in 20 years up here. So coupled with stock market declining, Bitcoin, it's no surprise that asset classes are like sports cards are potentially falling knives right now. So, I've been certainly looking at my own collection and thinking about, is there some stuff that it's maybe time to book a loss and move on from. And as I see everything decline, you see opportunities where you're like, wow, that's a card that I would want to sit on that for 10 years, or I believe in that 20 years down the line that's something that's going to be worth a heck of a lot more than what I'm seeing it at right now. Now that's super hypothetical, right? Because the reality is that the whole industry could go to zero. There's no intrinsic value to a sports card. It's not like real estate where you've got a rental income stream and you value the income stream, or a company that's got dividends and free cash flow and things like that. It's sports cards are like art. And they're fun as well. But with that being said, there's cards in particular in the vintage market that there is a long data set that supports that over a period of time that they actually produce greater returns than being in investment classes like stocks and real estate. So, I think that it's one of those times to think like, do you prune your portfolio of cards and maybe get rid of some of that junk or some of that stuff that you don't really, it doesn't mean anything to you personally? And is there something that, that you can buy in a falling market that you believe in long term? The reality is the market could go down 15, 20%. It's really hard to time the bottom of a market as well. If you try and time the bottom of a market, you're never going to get that right either. So I think it's one of those things where you've got to be thinking like, I don't know, sports cards, it's what's long-term anyways, but I think you have to be thinking longer term than what you have been thinking over the last couple of years. And, that's probably going to be different goats. Like it's Jordan stuff, it's Mantle, it's Gretzky. I'd be actually a little bit concerned about the Brady market. It's, maybe LeBron, Tiger. Obviously the Tiger market's been probably one of the most stable markets out of any athlete over the downturn. Golf is actually still, it's about flat when everything else is down 15 to 20%. So, it's one of those things. I'm seeing opportunities in cards that I've loved for a long period of time. Kobe 96 finest gold refractor. I love that card. That card to me is, that's like one of my favorite cards of all time. This is, these guys right here, the Nike Jordan card, PSA 10s, like I'm buying. I think that this card's worth 20 grand right now. That's what I believe in my heart. Is it actually? No. But if I see this card below what I think it's worth,
You're talking about the Air card that Kobe has?
Yeah, the gold one.
Yeah, like where it says Air in the top.
Yeah, like that refractor, like
that card is sick.
That's a killer card. Like I'd be happy to look at it every day. And if that reminded me, if it declined 15%, I looked at that card every single day and it made me like think about Kobe and what Kobe meant to me personally. Like, I mean, when he died, that drove me to build my business. I thought about him every single day. I carried a tribute book to Kobe in my laptop bag every single day. that, you know, that's the type of stuff I think on a go forward basis we all need to think about when it comes to sports cards. It's, you know, it's not about flipping is tough. It's going to be tough in a down market. Like it's probably just falling knives, flipping cards. It's going to be stuff that you want to put into a personal collection, and you know, something that you believe that a collector would pay more for in the future, right? Like that's ultimately what drives the value of a sports card is, would a collector pay more for this in the future than what I paid for it now? That's your bet now.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm fully on board with what you're talking about. And I've actually been engaging in this sort of dialogue in my own heart for a while. I think when I first bought the Mike Trout Finest or the Mike Trout Bowman Chrome, that was like my first one that I was like, this is the card I've been looking for forever. And of course it wasn't, you know, the Kobe PSA 10 range financially, but for me it was focusing on less prospects, less trying to flip on, you know, debuts and all that kind of stuff, and more like a long-term hold type thinking. I've since been trying to run down a Gretzky rookie, and like the blue border one. I just think that card is sick, and I'm not even a massive hockey fan. I did watch every Stanley Cup game. And I watched all the Oilers games when they were in the playoffs, because since you got me on, Connor, like I have only watched the Oilers. So, you know, that's your fault, Paul. So thanks. But I am like pushing that direction. I would love to have more Kobe cards. I've got several, but nothing to that, you know, to that end. Yeah, I think I'm pushing more towards GOATs in this season. I just went to a card show on Saturday where I set up and sold cards. And, you know, previously I would have been like, no, I don't want to move guys like I had a Jeremy Pena card, who's a shortstop for Houston, potentially going to win Rookie of the Year. I put it out on the table. That would have been a hold for me previously, but I put it out there and I sold it on Friday. So like, you know, I am moving cards that I typically would have just held. And I moved it for pretty much what I got it for. But I'm just concerned right now with the market that all things are going down. So I'm kind of trying to like hedge my bets a little bit, and then potentially move that money into some GOAT cards that are going to appreciate over a long period of time.
Yeah, it's no different. It's like the stock market too, right? In periods of recession or down periods in the market, typically, you know, it's the crafts, it's the utilities, it's the safer plays that typically would perform better. I think cards, you got to look at it the exact same way. Your GOATs are going to be your safer plays. And maybe this is time for all of us to reconsider like more of our portfolio theory when it comes to building expectation as to what you're doing with investing money in cards, right? Like most people, as they age, they're moving their money into, we'll call it safer stocks. If they're younger and want to take more risks, they build a portfolio theory in and around maybe more tech. I think you could apply some of these metrics to sports cards, right? And if your expectation is to get rich quick in sports cards now, like I kind of think that's over. It's, you know, the 2-year bubble of this industry during COVID, and, you know, tons of money being pumped into economic markets, like it's over. The world's moved on. Now we've got to deal with the problem of inflation in economies around the world, and supply chain and wars and things like that. It's back to getting into thinking like a regular investor would, and that those metrics can be applied to sports cards for sure.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying. Hey, a little clear in the throat there, guys. Sorry about that. It's 1:16 p.m. for me, and not I don't know. Normally it would be we'd be doing the show at about 5 p.m. for me, so the body's adjusting to the time. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think you guys are right on. And my personal experience and my sort of investment portfolio breakdown plan is going to look pretty similar to what you guys are talking about, which is just less prospecting. I think that like my prospects will probably come from wax that I open, and then I'll sell them. But in terms of going out and buying singles of prospects, I think that it's probably not going to be my main focus. Kendall wearing the Pirates hat makes me want to share a little bit of an anecdote that I think is a good thing. We've talked a lot about O'Neal Cruz on the show, and I think it's relevant to bring him back up again because he got his call up, and we had Chase Krim from Texas Roadshow Shop on last week, and I asked Chase, what do you think I should do with O'Neal Cruz? Should I sell on the hype of the call up? And he kind of made the comment, well, I don't know if there's going to be any call up hype. I think it was a fair comment, but I went ahead and listed it anyway. And I've had more views and watchers and bids on this O'Neal Cruz PSA 10 2016 Prospect Auto. And it's almost at $900 right now. And there's still 2 days left in the auction. And I paid probably below $550 for it. So I think that it's premature to say that you can't prospect anymore, but I am listing, to Kendall's point, like I am listing that and not waiting for him to do more. Like I'm the greedy part of being like, where maybe last year I would have been like, oh, let's see if he's the next Tatis, or let's see, like, let's see how much I can squeeze out of this. Now I'm kind of like, well, moment, list it, move on. And then to Paul's point, put that money, if I'm putting that money back into cards, I'm putting it into probably like a safer long-term investment, like a GOAT, saving up for a GOAT card, trading up into a GOAT card, something like that. So I think we're all saying the same thing there. Not that it's a horrible time for the sports card market, but just a time to really shift our thinking and our strategy, which I think is good. And the sports card investment report at No Offseason will reflect that. I think I'll talk a little bit later in the episode about some changes I made this week to kind of reflect that a little bit. But what do you guys think about, just have we seen the numbers in the hobby grow? I think of like our guy Andy Kaysen from the Football Card Strategy Show, and he looks a lot at social media metrics. And I feel like looking at the metrics and the action on Facebook groups around sports card trading, Twitter, sports card trading, Instagram, all these different not just the eBay comps, which we'll get into. I want to get into that with Paul in a minute, eBay comps and PWCC comps and things like that. But just the action and the numbers, do you guys feel generally safe that the hobby has enough serious collectors in it to where the demand is still going to be there for like long-term stuff that we're talking about?
I got some real questions about the high-end market. Like, I mean, I think that over the last couple of years, crypto, and there was some serious dough of people that realized returns in crypto and moved that over to the sports card industry, right? And that's, chasing cards and doing big breaks. And, the ultra modern segment of sports cards is probably hurting the most out of anything. I would have some serious reservations if that money is sticking around for the long term, and if that can support the higher end. I don't know. I'd be pretty negative about that. If I was betting for the next, 5 years, I don't know if I would be particularly bullish on the high end being supported, especially high end modern.
Okay. Kendall, what do you think?
Yeah, I would disagree, actually. I think with Fanatics coming into the space, they have, like way more draw to pull attention into sports cards. And I think with the pull they have with just the email listings alone is like, I think it's like 12 times the amount of people that are in the space currently. I think it's around 18 million or something like that, that they have the just already previous buyers. And if that alone transfers over, I think we'll see a market cap grow, especially if we're talking. And now you're Paul, you're speaking specifically to high end cards.
Yeah.
I think I'm specifically speaking to overall market cap, which is probably lower end cards.
I'm talking 6-figure plus cards.
Yeah. So that's honestly a topic I can't even talk about because I have no experience in. So. But I think the overall market cap is going to continue to grow over the next 10 years. But I think it will take some strange turns. And I think it will, we'll see like metas come out that are typically around the Gen Z Web3 space rather than physical card markets. I don't know how that'll play in. I think the addition of crypto and NFTs and Web3 and all that metaverse type stuff has a play in the market somewhere. And I don't know where it kicks off. And I think that Candy's didn't really go like I wanted it to. Candy, if you guys are familiar with what I'm talking about, the NFTs, MLB and NFTs didn't exactly go like I wanted it to. I don't really know how that plays in over the next 5 to 10 years, but I do think it does have some sort of element of play in the overall card market. And so, but yeah, 6-figure cards and overall market cap are totally two different. So
yeah, this is a really interesting, it's going to be a fun time for the hobby. It's changing, it's evolving. This is a hobby that changes, it evolves very, very quickly. One of the things I'm watching is, I think there's too many grading companies. I think PSA has to take the whole market and buy Beckett. I think Beckett, the fact that they're kind of hanging on by a thread, I think it actually hurts things overall. PSA needs to get more grading offices. I'm watching China really, really close right now. Like, I think if PSA can penetrate China, and
are they a public company?
Yeah, well, they were bought out by Steve Cohen, so I believe they're private now, Collectors Universe. But obviously there's going to be some AI that comes. So PSA has bought an AI company. They're talking about potentially having almost like kiosks that you can go get your cards graded at by AI technology. I think that's a big thing for the hobby. Like, I mean, China's market for the NBA is larger than it is in North America, right? It's hockey's growing 10x in China over the last couple of years, and they're projecting that hockey is going to be like one of the fastest growing sports in China over the next couple of years. Like, that's positive stuff. That's really, really positive stuff for the industry, but you have to make it accessible, right? Like, the only way that can happen is if PSA opens 10 offices in Japan and China, and cards get graded over there, because the way the process works right now, like, there's just, people from China aren't sending their cards to North America to get graded and then to have them sent back. And it's difficult. Like, I don't believe that there's like this super, super easy flow of sale transactions, whether it's auction house or eBay, from North America to China. So, like, I think things like that speak volumes to the potential for long-term growth, but there's going to have to be some things that happen to get it there.
Do you think shares of expensive cards will still be I know that kind of came out like a year or two ago. Do you think that potentially is going to figure out some of the geographic problems that you're referencing?
I like that space. I think that's a cool way. I mean, with like things like the vault, right? Whether it's golden or PWCC, like, people are already not putting cards in their hands. Like, if I'm buying a big card, I kind of want to touch it, but it's trending towards that you're sending them to a vault. So what's the difference between sending a card to a vault or having fractional ownership in something, right?
Absolutely.
Like, to me, it's kind of the same. So, I mean, if I could get access to buying like a percentage of something that I think is super, super cool, and and at least I get the brag piece that I own a very, very small percentage of it, I could be tempted to do that. I mean, if I'm never going to see it and touch it, I'm not seeing and touching anything sitting in my vaults right now. So what's the difference, right? If I can get access to owning something, or a very, very small fractional ownership piece of something that's extremely cool, I would definitely look into it, especially if I thought there was big time upside in it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that going back to what I said previously, I think that's a pretty close, like, not a far jump from like, oh, my cards are all in my vault, to, oh, I just have NFTs,
and that's like, I think about like a community, like sports card strategy. Like, I sometimes think in my mind, it'd be hilarious, like, if we all grouped together and said, hey, we're going to take a vote, and everyone's going to chip in $100, and we're going to go buy a $20,000 card and cheer it on together. And I think there's going to be like communities driven towards stuff like that, right? Like, what's a couple $100 to everyone if it meant that as a community we could be a part of something and all enjoy it? Like, maybe there's a side of the hobby that turns into community driven as well, right?
Yeah, I really like that. I think that could be fun, and I would definitely be down. So just real quick, I want to give a shout out to Cool Arrow, who's watching and commenting. Thank you for interacting with us on the show. We love this. And they've made a few comments here that I've put up on the screen while you guys have been talking, and it's good to know. I mean, everybody's got a different experience in the hobby, and it seems like Cool Arrow's experience is still that they're still finding ways to flip and make money. So I think that like that's great, because a lot of time, like, not that what Paul and Kendall are saying isn't totally legit. It is. Don't get me wrong, but I do think, like, I've always been skeptical of kind of the headlines everywhere in every aspect of life, and so I like that people are still having flippable wins, right? I mean, and while the macro is down, that doesn't mean that you can't find ways to make money.
Oh, absolutely. That's where you do make money.
So,
yeah, it's no different. It's like venture capital, right? Like, I mean, there's venture capitalists that are putting money into tech companies that are going up in value right now. But for every one that goes up, there might be 5 that go down. It's prospecting with sports cards is the exact same thing right now. I got a box full of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander stuff here that's down 90% right now. Like, I might as well just give it to a kid down the street and say, go enjoy these, get into the hobby. Is a great Canadian player.
I'm a Thunder fan, so if you want
I don't know, man. I don't know. He was on my list of guys to talk about post NBA draft. So we'll get to him later in the show for sure. But yeah, I think that Cool Arrow actually makes another good point here. They're just kind of saying that, in this time frame that we're in right now, this it could, and I remember Chase saying this last week too, to take losses on cards, like maybe it's your SGA cards, Paul, is one thing to do, or is there an opportunity to trade? Is there an opportunity to trade an ultra modern card or a bunch of ultra modern cards for a more reliable GOAT level type card? And if you can maneuver your way out of cards that people won't buy, but maybe they'll trade for, or at least they won't buy at the price that you thought that you could sell it for, but somebody will trade for it, there's ways to actually trade into something that maybe then you can flip. So it's more action, it's more effort. And I know, Paul, for a guy like you, there's a lot of people like you that, don't really want to put themselves in a position where they have to make multiple transactions to make money. Like I know you'd rather be like the fewer transactions, the better. So I think that lends itself to your higher end strategy. Whereas Kendall and I are kind of examples of people who are maybe doing more transactions or willing to make more transactions to figure out a way to profit from it. So I think to your own, basically.
I was going to say, like, to your point there, I think the way that the industry is going, though, you're going to have to roll up the sleeves and get a little dirty. You're going to have to work harder to make money. Like, what was my strategy the last couple of years? It worked. I actually don't think it works anymore. So that's like, I'm having to reevaluate what that means for me to be able to stay in cards and make money at this. Like, to their point about trading, and like, I might have to go to shows. There's not a ton of shows here in Canada, but like, I think I might actually have to look at, consolidation of maybe some of my GOAT cards into bigger GOAT cards, right? Like, the way transaction fees are going and whatnot, like the bigger cards, they're expensive to sell as well, right? So it's not always the best strategy to sit on something for a period of time and then try and sell it. The 20% that the auction house takes that wipes out any profit you're making anyways.